Welcome back, everyone. Ready to dive deep into some fascinating leadership ideas?
Always up for a good deep dive, especially one on leadership.
Well, get ready to explore leadership far beyond the basics. And just a heads up, this isn't your typical leadership how-to manual.
More like a high-level discussion, right?
Exactly. Think of it as a carefully curated wine tasting of advanced management thoughts.
I like that analogy.
We're talking concepts to ponder and apply over time, not just quick tips and tricks.
Makes sense. The author, Tamás Cservenyák, he's been working with leaders for over 25 years, guiding over 150 groups through leadership development programs.
He also has a popular blog and several ebooks on leadership, so he's definitely not a newbie to this field.
For sure. It's not just theory with Cservenyák. It feels like real-world experience distilled into these pages.
And honestly, the reason this book really resonates with us is because we both believe the world needs a different kind of leader now,
Oh, absolutely. Someone who's not just focused on hitting those quarterly targets.
Exactly. We need leaders who are focused on their team's growth, of course, but also really consider the impact of their decisions on the wider world.
It's not just about winning at all cost, right?
Right. It's about leading with integrity and considering those ripple effects on society and the environment.
So, a fair warning to our listeners, this deep dive is really best suited for those of you who are already comfortable with the basics of managing people.
Yeah, if you're brand new to leadership, Cservenyák actually recommends starting with his first ebook, Read This to Be a Better Manager.
Great starting point. But for those of you ready to level up, let's jump in.
Let's do it. One of the first things that struck me was how Cservenyák starts by asking a really fundamental question.
Oh, which one is that?
Why do we even need leaders?
It's such a simple question, but it really does make you stop and think.
Right. I mean, it's obviously not about power trips or micromanaging, right?
Exactly. He argues that true leadership is about providing guidance. It's about helping teams reach their full potential and achieve those shared goals.
And about developing their people along the way?
Yes. But there's another layer to it, too. Considering the ethical impact of your decisions.
Oh, that's so important.
He really emphasizes that leaders shouldn't operate in a vacuum. It's not just about your team winning. It's about considering the consequences for the wider environment, society as a whole.
It's about responsible leadership.
Precisely. Now, one of the most striking metaphors in the book is the inverted pyramid.
Okay, the inverted pyramid. I'm curious. Tell me more.
It was actually shared by one of Cservenyák's clients, and it basically flips the traditional hierarchy on its head.
So instead of the CEO at the top.
Instead of the CEO at the top, it's the frontline workers.
Wow.
They're at the pinnacle, and they're supported by layers of leadership.
And whose job is it to?
Whose sole job is to enable them to succeed.
So the leaders are there to serve the needs of those doing the actual work, removing obstacles and providing the resources they need to excel.
Exactly. It's a really thought-provoking concept.
It is. And it ties in nicely with the concept of servant leadership, which Cservenyák explores in depth.
Oh, for sure. Servant leadership is all about prioritizing your team's needs and focusing on developing them into the best versions of themselves.
It's like being a good parent.
Right.
Supportive, but also setting high expectations.
That's a great analogy. And speaking of different approaches to leadership, that leads us to McGregor's Theory X and Theory Y.
Okay, Theory X and Theory Y. Those are classic leadership theories.
Right. They represent two contrasting views of employees. Theory X assumes that people are inherently lazy and need tight control and direction.
And Theory Y.
Theory Y believes that people are capable of responsibility, self-management, and are actually motivated to do good work.
You know, I have to say, I'm definitely a Theory Y person.
You and me both. But I think it's important to acknowledge that a lot of leaders, especially when they're feeling stressed or under pressure, they kind of default to that Theory X mentality.
Well, for sure. It's easier to control than to trust, sometimes. But how can leaders stay committed to that Theory Y approach, even when things get tough? That's a great question for all of us to consider.
Absolutely. And it's something Cservenyák really dives into. He argues that modern leadership needs to be built on a foundation of trust and empowerment, not fear and control.
He talks a lot about creating a culture of empowerment and liberation. What did that look like in practice?
It's about building trust, sharing information openly, setting clear boundaries, and encouraging independent decision-making.
Which is easier said than done, right?
It is. It's easy to fall into the trap of wanting to swoop in and solve problems for your team. But Cservenyák points out that if you do that all the time, they never learn to think for themselves.
So it's about gradually expanding their decision-making authority and providing guidance and feedback along the way.
Precisely. You can't just flip a switch and expect everyone to suddenly become these self-managing masters.
It's a process, not an event.
Right. It takes time.
I like to think about it as giving people the space to stretch their wings and learn to fly while still providing a safety net.
I like that. A supportive environment where they can take risks and learn from their mistakes. So here's a question for our listeners. Think about your own team. What's one small step you could take today to start shifting towards a more empowering culture?
It can be as simple as giving someone more autonomy over a project
Yeah.
or soliciting their input on a decision.
Every journey starts with that first step, right?
Absolutely. And speaking of journeys, Cservenyák takes us beyond Maslow's hierarchy of needs and explores what motivates people once those basic needs are met.
Ah, yes. Getting into those higher levels of motivation.
Tell us more about that. What motivates people once they have food, shelter, and safety?
Well, he draws on Richard Barrett's model of personal consciousness, which suggests that once our survival, security, and even esteem needs are met, we start craving something more.
We want more than just a paycheck.
Exactly. We seek meaning and purpose, a desire to make a difference in the world.
To contribute to something bigger than ourselves. I can definitely relate to that.
Oh, how so?
A few years ago, I had a good job, a comfortable life, but I felt like something was missing. I was going through the motions.
I've been there.
At first, I really wasn't sure what to do, but then I started volunteering at a local animal shelter.
And how did that feel?
It was honestly transformative.
That's great.
It gave me a sense of purpose and fulfillment that I wasn't finding in my work at that time. It really made me realize that I need to feel like I'm making a positive impact on the world.
That's a beautiful example of tapping into those higher levels of motivation.
And it's something that Cservenyák argues is essential for effective leadership. Leaders need to connect with their own sense of purpose and meaning so they can authentically inspire others.
Right. It's not just about hitting targets and achieving results.
It's about leading with heart.
Leading with heart and inspiring your team to do work that truly matters.
Which leads us perfectly to another crucial point, leading by example.
Yes. Actions speak louder than words.
So true. Let's dig into that a bit.
Cservenyák is very clear. It's not enough to just talk about values.
You have to live them.
You need to embody them in your everyday behavior.
He gives a great example about time management. If you want your team to be punctual and respect everyone's time, you have to model that behavior. You need to show up on time for meetings.
Stick to the agenda.
Don't waste people's precious time.
Think about it. If you're constantly running late or letting meetings drag on, what message does that send?
Right. It undermines your credibility.
You're saying time isn't valuable.
And it undermines the culture you're trying to create.
It's not just about time management, though. It applies to every aspect of leadership: honesty, transparency, customer focus, quality.
Whatever values you're promoting, you need to live them.
You absolutely have to walk the talk. Your team is far more influenced by what you do than what you say. And this leads to the next big idea: values-based leadership.
Okay, I'm ready to unpack this one. What does it really mean to lead with your values?
Well, Cservenyák argues that for an organization to truly transform, the change has to start with the leadership team.
Their individual values need to evolve first.
Right, their beliefs.
That shift then influences their actions and behaviors, which then trickles down to the rest of the organization.
It's a top-down approach, but it has to be genuine.
You can't expect your team to embrace certain values if you, as the leader, aren't living them yourself.
It's about more than just talking the talk.
Right. Those values need to be embedded into the systems and processes of the organization. Think about hiring, training, performance evaluations.
Compensation, promotions, all of these need to align with the values you're espousing.
Otherwise, it's just lip service.
Exactly.
You can't say teamwork is important and then only reward individual achievements. Your actions have to align with your words.
Absolutely. And that disconnect breeds cynicism.
Big time. So values need to be more than just empty slogans. They need to be woven into the very fabric of the organization.
That's where the rubber meets the road. And Cservenyák also talks about another challenging aspect of leadership,
Which is?
balancing those opposing forces that we have to navigate.
Oh, this is something I know I've struggled with. It can feel like you're constantly being pulled in different directions.
It's a constant juggling act. He highlights the seeming contradictions that we have to navigate as leaders, being supportive yet demanding.
Close to the team, yet maintaining that sense of authority.
It's an ongoing balancing act.
And it's not easy. Like finding that sweet spot where you're friendly and approachable, but also holding people accountable for their work. It's a tough one.
What's reassuring is that he acknowledges that finding that balance is a skill, something you develop with experience. It's not something you're just born with.
That's a relief to hear, which is why continuous reflection and learning are so important.
Absolutely. And that's something Cservenyák really emphasizes. He even provides some really thought-provoking questions for personal development at the end of each chapter.
Oh, I love that. What are some examples?
Things like, how could I better serve my team? In what situations do I need to listen more actively? And where do I want to take my team in the next year, in the next 5 years?
Those are fantastic prompts for self-reflection.
They really get you thinking about how you can continuously improve as a leader.
And I think it highlights something else Cservenyák talks about, the importance of living in both the present and the future. As leaders, we need to be able to manage the day-to-day operations, but also keep an eye on the big picture, anticipate what's coming next.
It's like that dual focus we talked about earlier, one eye on the immediate tasks,
And the other eye scanning the horizon.
looking for those potential disruptions or opportunities.
It's so true. The world is changing so rapidly. If you're solely focused on putting out fires, you're going to miss those crucial signals.
You'll get left behind.
Exactly. You have to make time for strategic thinking.
Otherwise, you're not really leading. You're just managing.
Which brings us to another key responsibility of leadership: innovation.
And I think it's so interesting how Cservenyák emphasizes that innovation is not just the responsibility of a specific department or a select few individuals.
It's everyone's responsibility.
Every leader has a role to play in fostering a culture of innovation.
So we're not just talking about coming up with the next big thing.
Not necessarily. It's about constantly improving those processes,
Finding creative solutions to challenges.
elevating the quality of everything you do.
So it's about having that growth mindset, always looking for ways to do things better, even if they're just incremental improvements.
Exactly. And Cservenyák believes that anyone can be creative.
He doesn't believe it's some mystical talent that only a select few possess.
He even shares a personal story about taking a drawing class to boost his own creative thinking.
I love that. He actually
Good.
took a drawing class.
He did. And I don't think he became a master artist or anything, but it was about getting outside of his comfort zone
Exposing himself to new experiences.
and sparking that creative thinking in unexpected ways.
You never know where inspiration is going to come from. So it's a good reminder that we should all make time for those kinds of experiences.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've talked about balancing opposing forces, living in both the present and the future, and the importance of continuous innovation. What else does Cservenyák highlight as being crucial for effective leadership?
Well, he argues that truly effective leadership is about more than just achieving goals and hitting those targets.
It's about living a balanced life.
Yes. Making time for the things that matter most. Finding fulfillment both personally and professionally.
Avoiding burnout, creating a sustainable approach to leadership.
It's about working smarter, not harder, and recognizing that your well-being as a leader is essential to the well-being of your team.
That makes a lot of sense. A burnt-out leader isn't going to be very effective in the long run. Now, we've touched on this a bit throughout our conversation, but I'd love to circle back to this idea of authentic leadership. What are some of those key qualities that define an authentic leader?
Cservenyák emphasizes self-awareness as being absolutely foundational.
Knowing yourself, your strengths, your weaknesses,
And your values. They're clear about what they stand for.
and what they won't compromise on.
Exactly. It's about being true to yourself and leading with integrity. And being transparent in your communication, honest in your dealings with others.
But he also points out that being authentic doesn't give you a license to be rude or inconsiderate, right?
Right. You can't just be brutally honest all the time and use authenticity as an excuse to be disrespectful.
It's about being genuine while also being mindful of the impact of your words and actions on others.
That's the key. And in a way, that brings us back to one of the simplest yet most profound concepts in the book, the Golden Rule.
Treat others as you would like to be treated,
A timeless piece of wisdom, but so easy to forget in the heat of the moment.
especially when you're under pressure.
It really is. But Cservenyák reminds us that it should guide every interaction we have, whether it's with our team, our superiors, clients, or even our competitors.
He even argues that companies that genuinely prioritize ethical behavior and social responsibility and actually walk the talk tend to be more successful in the long run.
It's not just about doing the right thing, it's about doing good business. When you treat people with respect and fairness, you build trust, and that ultimately benefits everyone.
Yeah, I love that. It's not about winning at all costs. It's about creating a win-win for everyone involved. Okay, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive into leadership far beyond the basics. What are some of those key takeaways you hope our listeners will walk away with?
Well, I think the overarching theme is that leadership is an ongoing journey.
Not a destination.
It requires constant growth, self-reflection, and a commitment to ethical conduct.
It's not about having all the answers. It's about being willing to learn, adapt, and evolve as a leader.
And recognizing that your actions have a ripple effect, not just on your team, but on the wider world. We need to move beyond that old command and control model of leadership.
And embrace a more collaborative, empowering, and values-driven approach.
And I think Cservenyák provides a really compelling roadmap for how to do that.
He does. From the inverted pyramid to servant leadership, from empowerment to the golden rule. There's so many valuable insights and tools in this book. I'm already thinking about how I can apply some of these ideas to my own leadership approach.
Me too. And I think that's a sign of a truly great book. It makes you want to go out and be a better leader.
So here's a final thought-provoking question for our listeners to ponder. If you could implement just one idea from this deep dive into leadership far beyond the basics, which would it be and why? Which concept resonated with you the most? Which one do you think would have the biggest positive impact on your team and your organization? We'd love to hear your thoughts.
Reach out to us on social media, leave a comment on our website, or send us an email. We're always eager to learn from our listeners and engage in these important conversations about leadership.
And if you're looking for more resources and support on your leadership journey, be sure to check out Cservenyák's website and his other ebooks. He offers a wealth of practical advice and insights to help you level up your leadership game. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Until next time,
Keep learning,
keep growing,
and keep leading with purpose.